Welcome to Warcraft Reloaded, a podcast brought to you by Match Those Buttons, covering World of Warcraft Classic, TBC Classic, and its community. I am Bobby, also known as Blazing Bob, and today I'm joined by Yip, aka Cognitive Pit. What's going on?
Not too much, not too much. Been painting all day, so a little exhausted. Also stayed up all night after raid, so
I was
combine those two things. But I'm here. I'm here. We got, as usual, energy drinks, so I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, we got to stop staying up so late into the morning on Thursday nights. But we're also joined by Mel, aka Melarita. How you doing?
Hello. I'm not as tired, I guess, but I didn't do any painting today, so, I did do Nax last night, and then I woke up, I'm pretty sure, like an hour before I needed to be at work, and Bob was sitting on the couch like comatose. He had just finished playing the game, and I was like, what are you doing?
Oh, man. Yep. And also, we are joined by a very special guest. You may know him from Countdown to Classic or the Sitter Files podcast host extraordinaire, Josh Corbett. How are you doing, brother?
Hey, guys. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's awesome. So on this episode, we're going to go through housekeeping real quick. We're gonna then do the news, basically like most of it's TBC news, and then we're gonna do a interview with Josh. So it's gonna be a good time. So strap in and first off, the YouTube giveaway. We're starting the second wave of them. All you have to do, like and comment and subscribe, and it gives you one entry each of the episodes for 4 weeks, and then we give away a $20 gift card. So please help us out. All right, we had one review this week. Yep, you want to take that?
Yeah, so we had a review from it's a long username, but Scott. We had a review from Scott. Love the show. 5 stars, of course. First off, let me say that I absolutely love the beatbox intro / outro by Steelwolf. Every time it comes on, I start rocking out in my car, poorly beatboxing along to it. We get a lot of mixed reviews, but I think it's here to stay. So I'm glad you like it. Second, love the show. Definitely second to the beatbox intro. Even though I stopped playing Classic a few months ago, I still tune in weekly to the podcast. Love all 3 of the hosts, and they often bring on solid guest personalities as well. The content is always relevant, and the commentary is both interesting and relatable. I don't know how they do it, but they continue to have hours of interesting discussion about a 16-year-old game. My only complaint is that they don't also have a retail podcast. I haven't been able to find a retail podcast that I enjoy on the same level. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. We unfortunately
We are also
probably would not have
flabbergasted at the
content.
fact that we can talk for hours upon hours about this game.
Guys, I've got a question actually about the beatbox intro, because I'm so glad this came up because like I told you, Bob, I was listening to a couple of your episodes about a week ago, and it'd been a while since I'd last listened, and I'd forgotten about the beatbox intro, and I was sitting there in my car going, I had so many questions. I was like, what is the origin of this intro? Like, did the guy beatbox over WoW music and like record it live, or did you splice them together and it just happened to work out? Like, it's so interesting to me.
It was recorded live. Steelwolf, who was originally on this podcast, he is just a talented musician. He loaded up some WoW music and he just beatboxed over it. And I think that's
great.
the origin.
All right.
Yeah.
Yep. I made all the bumpers, and then the news bumper is me talking like a dwarf, and then the discussion bumper was a guy named Bradshaw in our guild that does a really good Hank Hill impression. But yeah, it's
Okay.
What's funny is that like I do the same thing for the countdown to classic music. Is I get all like pumped up and I'm like, ooh, and I tell Mel like, you really love a show when you dance to the intro. Like I had a dance for Game of Thrones where I'm playing the violin like next to Melissa, drove her nuts.
Yeah.
But you can tell that you really like a show when you do that. If you're
a good intro is so important.
This is specifically a Bob thing, though. Like he finds dances. I can really like an intro and still not dance to it.
Yep, I'm kind of a weirdo, but it's okay. All right.
He also will do it in public. Can we just point that out? I live with this man, and yes, if he is listening to the podcast when we're at the grocery store, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to the other side and grab whatever we need from the frozen section. You do your thing.
No, Bob, you're not alone. You're not alone with Game of Thrones. I used to do the thing, and I'm sure if people in their heart of hearts were being honest, a small portion of the population would say the same. I used to do the thing, sorry, when Game of Thrones started, and I would go along with the music and just, say inane things along to it. Like I'd be like, it's time for Game of Thrones and I've got my beer. I wish I had some pizza also with me here. Like stupid things like that.
That's hilarious because I do the same thing to Belle with a lot of different stuff. That's
He
great.
makes up songs all the time, and they're quality. For
Oh
sure.
man, yeah. It's okay though. You're having fun. Life is short. Why not be a little silly?
That's the spirit.
Life is short. Let's start a retail podcast, Bob. We're being begged for it. We're being asked for it.
No. All right. Well, let's move into the news. So it turns out that area effect spell cap isn't really stopping mages from doing AOE. They're fine. Like, the AOE that they're doing in the TBC isn't like, 500 mobs, like the Moradon pull, 300 mobs, 180 mobs. It's, and I think that type of AOE we kind of expected to exist, but it's the terrain that they're using to actually do this, properly. And so then also in classic they're finding, there's an item, a sword that does extra damage, and they're finding ways to flame strike. So it looks like the AOE like mage meta is probably here to stay. It's just going to change and be a new look.
Yeah, it's not probably not going anywhere as things are. Unfortunately, I really dislike this type of gameplay. I had looked into mage solos of Dire Maul East, and this is pretty much how they work, right? Abusing the terrain to make bosses run back and forth so you can solo them. I think that is just the least interesting mechanic / I don't want to say exploit, but it is just sort of, mage is so cool because you just have so many tools in your toolbox. You have so many different ways to get out of situations. You have so many different spells that you can use. And then the way that people are doing pulls are just kind of like terrain abuse. You're not using your kit in interesting ways. It's just okay.
I have a newfound respect for this mage terrain abuse though, because I've tried it. And it's not just
Same.
like an easy like jump up on this wall and everything does its thing. No. It takes skill. And like those people that do Moradon, I don't know if anybody has heard from a friend of a friend that's been boosted, that's a thing, but they will go and pull all these mobs. And if you've been there and it's been a bad person, you realize because they die like 4 times and you're like, what am I paying for / not paying for?
Yeah, I have tremendous respect for the skill that it takes. I mean, it is impressive. I've tried it myself to varying degrees of success, but not very much success. But I don't like it though still. Like, what do you think, Josh?
I'm just going to be echoing you guys in terms of like, I agree that it does, take a modicum of skill to pull that move off. It's a funny one because, it might take hours and hours of practice that these people have put in to get like the Mara pull down and everything. When we talk about like terrain abuse and things like that, it is something that the community has overwhelmingly seemed to accept. And I'm one of them too. I'm honestly like, I'm okay when we talk about the abuse side of things. Like there's one guy in the subreddit that I moderate who just has it's his life crusade to convince people that we're all cheaters and that, God, I wish I was joking at how often he brings this up. He's our biggest troll. But we're all cheaters, our classic, because we happily engage and applaud things like terrain abuse in order to, reap the benefits economically and all of that stuff. Look, I agree that by the very definition, it might be an exploit, but obviously it's one that has sort of been deemed to be okay by the devs. Otherwise, I think it would have been taken out a very, 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 very long time ago. And it's what, like, people like Kevin Jordan might define as emergent gameplay. Is it cheesy? Absolutely. But someone along the way has gone, you know what? Fuck it. That's a bit of fun. And so it is what it is. The problem is now that everyone is doing it. So because we didn't sort of close the gates all those years ago, we've now unloaded and the community can go nuts, and its effect on the economy is what it is. So I'm for it in terms of fun, cool, emergent gameplay. Oh, you found a way to work around the system, and as I say, it does take skill. So it's not like absolutely anyone can do it. I know it's still relatively easy to pick up, but the after effect is more the thing that bothers me. And same with boosting, mage boosting in dungeon. If AoE is still going to be a thing in TBC, the after effect of that, it's fun to watch and everything, but it's more than just an economic thing. And I don't want to necessarily go down I don't want to go down the avenue of the boost, but this is boost adjacent. When we talk about the after effect of the boost and of mage boosting, is that if everyone now, it's a weird situation where everyone will basically wind up having every class at cap. And it's a weird thing because we talk about games like Final Fantasy XIV, which I love and I play along with my wife as well. And that is a game that gives all the access into the hands of the player. You can play, you create one character and one character alone, and you can play any class or profession within the game. And you simply just wake up on the day and decide what you want to be. Today, I want to be a paladin. Tomorrow, I want to be a healer. Today, I want to be a leather worker. Tomorrow, I want to be a blacksmith. Like, you can do it all at any time you want. So it works in that game. But like, it's funny how I don't know why. It's probably very hypocritical of me. I feel funny about it when we talk about it in the environment of WoW Classic, where we were raised. And again, I don't want to be the old fuddy-duddy who's like back in my day, but this game was created with the idea that you weren't meant to be everything. You were the paladin and you were the blacksmith, and that was kind of you. It was, back in the days of bring the class, not the player. Now Blizzard has very much so along the years moved against that because they found it to be an exclusionary policy, where now we're bring the player, not the class. The problem is that the player is every class. So it's great to have options, and I applaud that, but I feel like we're being given too many by the gameplay at our disposal, where, like I said, I mean, I'm the dirtiest, well, not the dirtiest casual, but like, I don't deem myself to be a sweaty player. I have 6 classes. It's fucking ridiculous.
See, I definitely don't.
But I didn't mage boost.
I definitely don't. I have one that I play pretty much all the time, and then reluctantly worked up another with Bob.
2.
And okay, 2, but I worked up a mage because I felt like, hey, I can make a lot of money. And then I tried to do the little mage things, and I was like, okay, never mind. I'm going to put that to somebody else. Bob, will you help with the mage thing? And doing it together, we've talked about this before, was just a freaking nightmare. Because, listen, married couples just avoid trying to do mage speedrun things. It's not healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't talk smack on the boost. We have never boosted a character all the way, but we've definitely boosted gaps, like specifically gaps where we're out of quests. We love doing quests. We don't love grinding, really. And Mel even loves the quest where she flies all over the world and turns them in. And I just peace out during those times.
It's not that I love them. It's that I just get a sense of satisfaction of the completion. It really irks me when there's a question mark on my questy that I have to just go turn it in.
Yeah, but
on the idea of bring the player, not the class, though, it is interesting. I'm going to be warrior tanking in TBC, and I see so many people, and I'm considering it partially because warriors sort of fall off to feral druids in T6. So many people are talking about just boosting their 58 as a druid. They're going to gear it up alongside their warrior, and then come T6, they'll just switch and run 2 feral and a paladin. And to me, I'm like, I want to play my warrior tank in TBC. I like playing my character and I like to embody it, but it is like I have a bunch of characters. I'm going to have a ton of characters. And I think that is kind of a problem sort of as a whole. And then on the terrain abuse, it wouldn't surprise me if Blizzard fixed it. I think it's well within the reason of like some of the fixes that they changed in classic now. So like letting some of the attack power buffs apply to hunters. They said that that's something that they originally intended to happen, but it just never did. So they fixed it. To me, when they reduce the strength of AOE, the intention of the game is sort of to remove some of this, right? Like I would think that in the original designer's eyes, if you're going to be doing an AOE cap, you're not really supposed to be doing these sort of pulls. I don't think they will change it because of, I mean, it's just rampant right now in so many different pulls. Dire Maul North, Dire Maul East, Scarlet Monastery, Maradon. Like it's all over the place that we're doing this already. But I think it would be well within reason to make that change and follow that same design philosophy as letting those hunters get some of those buffs.
It almost
On-
defines mages, though, at this point, right? Do you agree? Like, it defines them as this AoE farmer class.
But I mean, couldn't
which
you
isn't-
just turn it off where you could just make like you could stop boosting from 1 to 45 pretty easy by changing the way, like by basically giving a negative for a 60 being in a low level group. Like you could nip that in the bud pretty easy.
It's an experience formula thing that they would need to tinker with. Whereas it's tough because particularly in Burning Crusade, where the level disparity is not as high. Let's say if you've got a few 62s and a level 70 in a dungeon, but like you would have to basically start punishing that and going, if you go into a dungeon with a max level player, we are now going to hammer your experience and push people to group up with players of the same level, which, look, it's an odd concept to kind of wrap your head around because we're so used to the notion of, oh, my friend is just helping me run through this dungeon and we're not AoE farming. He's just a level 70 tank who said he'd make it easier for us. Great, cool. So it is a dangerous concept to play with where we start to think of removing that. But, if we have gone so far as we have, maybe it is something that we need to start thinking about. I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not opposed to it personally.
Same.
I mean, I guess I think, though, in addition, this is an old game, right? We've all been there, done that, not everybody, but a lot of us have been there, done that, and played TBC. So this really might push people the wrong way, but really, what's the harm? Like, if it gets somebody to come back and play.
Oh wait,
with
did you
us?
just move to the boost, to the 58 boost? I don't want to get into that. Josh had a huge
No,
long
I'm
conversation about
saying
that
just
on a podcast
boosting in
yesterday.
general. I'm talking just boosting in general, right? Some people just don't enjoy that aspect of the game. The questing, the leveling up, all of that. They enjoy the end part of the game. And I get that it's a means to an end, right? You have to go through this to get to this. But for some people, that effort level is too high that they just say, forget it. When they could be a meaningful part of the community at the end game, which is really all of our goal, right? Nobody's just, okay, not nobody. I'm sure there's some people, but most people aren't just like, I'm going to level a character to 60, then go start another one and level that to 60 and not do anything once I get there, right? That's usually not the end goal.
See, I guess my problem with the boosting isn't really anybody but bots. Bots is the problem that I have with boosting in general, however you do it, paid, mage boosting. That's the problem that I have with it personally. And I just think Blizzard should just be better with bots. And I know that's, a hard thing to say. I don't know what they have to do it, but I think they could. Like that's kind of where I'd like to leave it. But if you got something else to say, go ahead.
we're talking a lot about boosting, but personally for me, it's not so much the boosting that's a problem. I mean, we all ran. I mean, even in vanilla, I try to get higher levels, draw me through dungeons and things like that. It just is what it is. I don't like the pathing issues, right? Like this is the main problem is the pathing. When I see the boost in Maradon, whatever, I don't even care anymore. But when I'm watching people in beta who are on their mages doing slave pens and 2 pulls solo as a mage, that doesn't feel that good to see. Like I don't want to see TBC already looking somewhat broken because of this pathing thing. So for me, it's like the boost. It just is what it is. So many people have boosted it. Take it away. It's such a broad conversation. To me, I just don't really like the pathing and the abuse of the pathing because it's not really. It doesn't feel intended. It's fine if it stays. Like it just is what it is. We have accepted it in a lot of different ways. People have been using it for almost 2 years now. A year and a half. So it just is what it is. But it wouldn't surprise me if they took it out, and I don't think I would mind if they took or if they fixed some of this pathing, even just
It
if
is
they
a
did it in a specific area. Like you can't this area, you'll now just be attacked by mobs if you're on it.
right.
Well,
It is a
here,
little
can
bit
I move
different
us
too
on
from
though?
60 to 70. One more thing.
All right.
It is a little bit different from 60 to 70 though, right? Because I love questing, and if we go into TBC and the mages can boost people through dungeons and get you to 70 quicker, there will be a lot of people that will do it just because they feel like they're obligated to do it to get to the end to
Yeah, with their
raid
raid.
with their guild, right? And I think that removes that aspect of the game from people who actually wanted it. And I don't like that. I don't It's 10 levels. Like, come on, people, you can figure that out.
All right, well, I'm going to move us on. But if anybody wants more on the boosting, Josh guested on the most recent episode of Snowbe's new podcast, episode 5. And then Josh also had this conversation on Countdown to Classic. It wasn't the last episode, but it was the episode before, right, Josh?
I think it was the last episode, the latest one, number 17.
Well, you should just listen to both of them. But I mean, they had long, great conversations about it. So I don't think we need to do that here. Let's just move on to Blizzard is changing world buffs for the classic era servers. And supposedly, probably whenever they do fresh, it'll be the change there too. And basically, what it is it's an item called the Chronoboon Displacer that basically just snapshots it puts your buffs in a bottle. Like you can use it once every hour. You can put your buffs back on anytime. You don't have to wait the hour, but you do have to wait the hour to rebottle world buffs. And this is specifically for classic era servers, and it should probably become active when the pre-patch hits and the servers are broken into 2 different servers. What do you guys think of this change? Who wants to go first?
Too little, too late. Come on, Blizzard.
Yeah,
Listen,
I
if
think
you're
we're all
staying
thinking
in
that.
classic era servers, you're probably fine with the world buffs at this point. Like, God.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool idea. We had talked before about an idea like this. Apparently, is been kind of circled around in private server discords and things like that. I had never heard of this idea, and we've never talked about it on the podcast. And it sounds like a really cool idea because you still have the meta of having to go out and get your buffs. You are going to lose some time on your buffs unless you're like a super sweaty tryhard, but you're going to lose some time on your buffs as you go get them. People will still be able to kill you as you're getting them. And I think it actually improves the PvP meta because if you're going to have to, everyone is going to start getting the Fellwood buff as opposed to just like the sweaty tryhards. So you can go out and kill them during that
But
process.
what you can do, though, currently on PTR, it's really buggy too. But what you can do currently is you could actually like go get dire mall buffs, bottle them, log out for an hour, go get ZG, or go get ZG, pop your buffs back on, rebottle them, log out for an hour, rinse, repeat, so that you literally can start the raid with 2-hour buffs and 1-hour buffs completely. Which,
So it actually just makes world buffs take longer to get?
well, I mean, I split mine up anyhow. It would work for me, but like it makes it so you'll have your buffs longer. You can also do it in combat currently. So if you're about to wipe, bottle them up. You get 1 opportunity every hour.
For real? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's
Snowby,
cheesy.
I don't know how I feel
Snowby
about
tested
that.
it. Yeah, it's a
That
video
just
from
feels like an
Snowby.
unintended side effect to me, though. These are things that like this is our idea for the chrono booster, but or the Chronoboon, but like I don't think they thought of this yet. I mean, it's something that
Yeah,
they're
it's something
testing.
that could
I
change.
assume these sort of really sweaty, like I can actually keep my world buffs for longer this way. I'm assuming is not what they are intending for you to do with this particular item, and I'm kind of just hoping that goes away. And if that's the case, I think that this is really cool. I think it kind of gets you to get the Fellwood buff, which I know a lot of people like in our guild aren't getting. I think it makes the world more active at any time during the day. I mean, it's just obviously to me in the way I play, it would make a huge difference not having to stay logged out. It makes a huge difference that I can go get world buffs on a Sunday and not just wait for till Tuesday to do it. So to me, this seems like an amazing change. It's something that I would have loved to have for all of Classic. But well, I mean, it's going to be Classic era, so it won't really matter too much for what I'm going to be doing. But it's still a cool little item.
What do you think,
It's such
Josh?
an odd thing. Yeah, it's such an odd thing to hear that last note, Bob, that, if it is going to be a thing, I don't know whether it's the intention or not, or how it's going to be when it goes on live servers, that, just before a wipe, you can hit that button and save and keep your world buffs. That, look, people might disagree with me. I think that's odd. I think that's weird. I don't like it. Reason being, look, I can understand if this is Blizzard's intention. Yep, let's let them, semi-skillfully save their own world buffs. If that's the intention, then I would think that they've done it for one of two reasons. Number one, and obviously with the implementation of the item, they've acknowledged this, that, the Classic player base has a morbid obsession with world buffs. Let's just absolutely acquiesce to that obsession, and that's why the item exists in the first place. But then also that our obsession goes so far that we won't even accept a wipe. We have to keep them honest at all times. So let's just take it one step further and give them the ability to keep it even in the face of a wipe. The second reason why I think that they might have done it this way, again, if this is intentional, is to somewhat decrease the level of toxicity that comes with a wipe and losing world buffs. The kind of chatter that can start up amongst a guild, among, fuck you, Bob, I can't believe you did that. Well, yeah, because it's happened to me once before. Once in game, I was the reason that a raid lost its world buffs because my dog jumped on me and I had auto run on and walked into a pack of mobs, and by the time I got back to the keyboard, which is I was away for like 2 seconds, by the time I got back, I had wiped a pug's world buffs completely. Everybody hated me. I copped it, but I deserved it. Like I wore it and whatever, and I played really well after that and kind of had them laughing about it by the end, so it was all good. But still, like, there's no doubt that you can draw some real ire from players if world buffs are caused to be deleted from you because of a stupid mistake, or because of, you just couldn't get a boss down. So that's the two reasons why I would think they would want to do this is those. But in saying that, I still feel funny about it, even if they've got, our best interests at heart, quote unquote. We've talked about the crutch that world buffs have become for some guilds. Now, yes, I know world buffs are incredibly fun. It's like a little mini game for so many of the hardcore players. How far can we go with no one dying? And, they push our speed runs and everything. And that's fantastic. I fully applaud that. Go nuts. You guys play the game a different way. But for the guilds that aren't cutting edge and are just kind of like decent guilds that use world buffs and make them mandatory or whatever and clear the content that way because it just makes it easier, right?
Yeah, that's what we do.
But if you need the world buffs to clear the content and you cannot clear a certain boss without it, and then this thing comes along and says, don't worry, we've got you in the event of a wipe, hit that button, save your buff, zone back in, click it again, buff reappears with the same amount of time it had when you saved it. You guys get to give it another stab.
Everyone gets a trophy meta.
How far are we taking this crutch? Like, it's already a crutch. Now we're making it a super crutch. And I know there aren't that many guilds out there that are necessarily, super duper struggling with the content. I know you guys, like you say, you use world buffs, you might not be a cutting edge guild, but I'm sure you're still getting through it.
Well, I mean,
but
we've dropped every boss in Nax except for Patchwork without buffs. So, I mean,
okay.
But later on, after we got gear,
fine.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I just think that, if you can't do it without and this was said by North on my podcast, if you can't do it without a buff, there is a sizable element of the player base that I think that you don't deserve to clear the content effectively.
I would have to totally agree with you. Like, Nax was built so that you're supposed to run it for probably a month or two before you ever do Staff or KT. Like, that's, you're working on getting your frost res, blah, 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 and
yeah.
I think
It's like
the
bowling
biggest
with
problem,
bumpers,
though,
right?
Yeah, it's bowling with bumpers, exactly.
Yeah.
So what Blizzard is actually doing here is, again, if this all might turn into a moot point if they change the way that it works on live, right? So this is just, please view this conversation in a bubble. But if it does come to be that way, they have taken already an incredibly trivial game content-wise, maybe not so much Nax, but still, and just made it even more trivial to the point that, I know you're trying to spice up fresh classic servers for later down the line, but if we are just playing fresh classic servers to either speed run or just, I don't know, be PvP gods with all the best gear because everyone's wearing the same thing. Like it's an odd concept where it's like Blizzard is acknowledging we will make this the easiest game alive as long as you're playing it for some other fun reason.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Like nothing except for Nax has really felt like most guilds need world buffs at all. Like why not just get rid of them completely? That's what would entice me, is if they're just gone. Like do the same thing we're going to talk about next, but just wipe them when you walk into the raid. I don't
I think the
understand
problem with that
the worst.
is
The worst part of world buffs isn't just getting dispelled, but like Josh said, creating a toxic environment for your guild when someone dies or when multiple people die. That's the worst part of it, and that's still going to be there even with being able to pull it out in combat, because you still only you get an hour, so you'll be able to do that once an hour.
Yeah.
So
I've noticed one funny thing just in the feedback that I'm seeing online already is that, I'm on board with the whole, not necessarily deleting world buffs from the game. I don't think necessarily you'd have to go that far. There is a fun way in which still to work with world buffs. But also on top of that, I'm finding that I think the same people who are, everyone's okay. Everyone is so delighted, I think, for the most part, that TBC won't have world buffs in dungeons. And, I'm one of them. I think, I have talked to the hardcore speedrunners who are similarly happy, who are like, yeah, great, okay, this world buff thing won't be a thing in TBC. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure some people are sad about it, but I think more are very happy about it. But what I'm getting at is those same people who are like, thank God no world buffs in TBC, seem to also say, don't touch my world buffs in Classic. And I don't understand that, because Bob, by your suggestion, if you did come out with a change and said, hey, by the way, for fresh classic servers, we're going to go what we're doing with what we're doing with TBC. And when you zone into a dungeon or a raid, they will be wiped. So you can only have them in the open world. I just think that people would riot, but I don't understand why they'd riot in Classic, but not in TBC. It just seems a bit contradictory to me, but maybe I'm sort of being too speculative on how other people are thinking.
Well, I was going to say that it is a big fundamental change, right? I think that for fresh, you can sort of maybe do more, or if you're talking about a classic plus experience. But if we're talking about classic era, where I'm trying to copy my character over and have a similar experience to what I'm having now, to then say, okay, we're removing world buffs altogether. Well, I'm not really copying my character over to the same server I'm playing on. I'm copying my character over to some other version of classic that doesn't exist, which is sort of happening with this item, but they're still trying to keep intact what people are doing now. And there's ways that this can be cheesed, not even just with turning them off during wipes and things like that. I was talking to Bob about this. This would be awesome for our guild, because the only way we can do Nax in a single night is to leave and rebuff, which is such a pain. We need a heart in guild, we need a head in guild, we need a horde priest who's ready to mind control so that we can reset the head. But if we can just walk in, do patchwork with buffs, maybe even go further than that. Gluff for us would be nice with buffs, and then we save them for 4 horsemen, Saffron and KT. Then we're good to go in a night. We don't need to go rebuff. So this is this would be a huge boost to our guild.
Just to give you food for thought, just to give you a little bit of food for thought there, Yip. I'm not trying to be too cheeky with this, but just to throw a potential hypothetical back at you. It's funny because when you say that, what I kind of hear is, and tell me if I'm getting it wrong, but what I'm hearing is the kind of it's always been that way, so why change it now? Policy, right? So with world buffs, and yeah, world buffs have been around for 15 years, whether you're playing on private servers or in Classic or back in the day in the vanilla. It's always been that way. it's going to be such a whiplash reaction if they rolled out fresh classic servers and world buffs weren't a part of it. I do understand what you're saying, but then it's funny how we kind of don't apply that same rule necessarily. And this might please tell me I'm a fucking idiot, guys, if this is a straw man argument, because I'm not very good with identifying straw man arguments. But we don't apply the same logic necessarily to something like, let's say, multi-boxing, where multi-boxing was part of the Blizzard policy for 15 bloody years. And yeah, a lot of people didn't like it, but it was totally cool. And now it's been taken away and everyone cheered, as opposed to saying, well, but it's always been that way. Why change it now? Do you know what I mean?
Yep, true. And I mean, that was kind of a change probably pushed by retail, the fact that multi-boxers could all tap like one flower.
Oh, it was.
And one,
yeah. But it had ramifications in Classic too, obviously.
Yeah, but I think if you get down to the root of it, right, changing the fact that you could or could not have world buffs now changes the meta. And I think that's people's biggest pushback right now, is that warriors are great right now because of world buffs and other things. I mean, you guys are fine, but
we would be potatoes though to a fully geared rogue in Nax gear without world buffs though.
And a lot of people have built up their warrior and geared their warrior and are playing at an elite level because of world buffs. So you take out world buffs in Classic right now, and then those people are just like,
makes sense.
Well, what the heck, right? I've put so much time and effort into this character. Now I better go level another character. Now the change in TBC where you're not.
Yeah, why don't you cover that?
A warrior goes in and is not elite, and there's no world buffs already. So I don't think that it affects as much that you can't go into a dungeon with world buffs.
But yeah, real quick
clarify. So what they're doing in TBC is just, if you have world buffs, once you enter raid or dungeons, they're just gone. They're just gonna poof off you, right? And then you're not gonna have world buffs in that scenario. So I think that is I think that's a great way to do it. So I want to clarify really quick. If we're talking about Classic Fresh, X out world buffs, don't care at all. I think we're talking specifically about Classic Era, where you are copying your current character over to change the rating meta, then feels a little bit odd.
I would agree with that.
That's more my point. If you were talking about a fresh server, I love getting rid of world buffs. Just get rid of them altogether. People won't already have like their warriors they're attached to and things like that. I think
you would pick a different class though, wouldn't you?
Right? Yeah. People would probably.
And it might actually make it more fresh. Because there would be a little bit of a change that the meta isn't have 12 Fury Warriors.
Yeah, but
I'm with you, Yip. I think that's totally fair. And so, sorry, like I said, I was more trying to give you a bit of cheeky food for thought than trying to say that you were wrong or whatever before. But like, yeah, I agree. I think that I'm the captain of the ship in terms of change the meta. I want the meta changed every bloody quarter if we could. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is like this weird player base, which I think our guild falls into. So Bob sort of misspoke earlier, saying that our guild has mandatory world buffs, or kind of agreeing like, yeah, our guild's like mandatory world buffs.
Oh,
but we don't have mandatory world buffs. We sort of we like slid into mandatory world buffs because we're all these sort of like, I mean, people kind of characterize us as sweaty casuals, and I think that fits it well. I don't want to go get world buffs, but if there is going to be this meta that exists, I can't help but go get them. I want them gone in TBC, but if they exist, I'm still gonna go get them.
Yeah, it's such a slippery.
Where I fall in.
That's slippery slope. It's a slow burn addiction, at least for sure for me. Like I started out, I'll get Ani, back when we were doing Molten Core, and then BWL comes out, like, I'll get Songflower and Ani. Then all of a sudden I'm getting Songflower, Ani, and ZG. And then finally I dropped Songflower and started getting DM buffs. So now every week I have, ZG, Ani, and DM buffs. And it's just like, I never thought I would do it. I was just like, I'm not going to do it. And then you just end up doing it because you want to push the numbers, and it just slowly gets you. I mean, at the start of Classic, on the Alliance side, at least on our server, Iron Forge was packed. Everybody was there. and then nobody was in Stormwind, but now it's slowly shifted to where nobody's in Ironforge, and Stormwind you can barely walk without lag. So it's just weird how it
Yeah.
slowly creeps up on you.
Yeah,
But I
I've seen
also
people
think you
talk.
look at the duration of Classic, right? As a healer, I never purposefully got a world buff before Nax because I didn't have to. It was, I mean, I was begging for somebody to go down in life that I could heal before some other healer
Yup.
healed them. Like it was this mini game of, can I get my heal in before yours? Not, oh, I'm running out of mana. Like that wasn't a thing. So as a healer, I was like, I don't need this. And then Nax came and there was like all this anticipation. So I got him the first night and then I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to do this the rest. So I have only experienced the world buff woes since Nax.
That's great. That's great. Well, does anybody else have anything to follow up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people say, hey, if you don't want world buffs, go join a guild that doesn't require world buffs, or go join a guild that is specifically, we don't get world buffs. But I think that there is a problem with that. The same way that sometimes people will write to us and say, hey, you're acting like everybody plays the way you do. It just doesn't, people aren't like that all the time. For me, I want to play with like-minded individuals. And unfortunately, my like mind is if there's something available like that, I'm going to go get it and do the best that I can. So in order for me to play with like-minded individuals, I kind of have to fall into this meta for me to have the most fun. And whether it's not actually fun because world buffs sometimes aren't fun, I just can't help it because it's the way I play the game. And I just need Blizzard to take it away from me.
My dream for fresh classic servers is for some portion of the player base that now this will never happen. I am completely, aware of the fact of the reality of what I'm about to propose. But my dream is, how we have the hardcore challenge in WoW Classic?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So my dream is the normal mode challenge on fresh classic servers where guilds step up to the plate and ban people from getting world buffs and say, if you turn up to the fucking raid with a world buff, you click that shit off or you get the fuck out because we're doing this in normal mode. We're doing it like, a la mode. We're just vanilla ice cream as, quote
Some
unquote was
guilds
intended.
do that. Like some guilds
Well,
do
yeah,
that
I mean,
because you
I
can
would love
actually
to see more of
track.
it.
Yeah, you can track parses on Warcraft logs. If everybody in your raid doesn't have a world buff, it tracks you on the non-world buff section. But
Yeah, that's right.
It
I
didn't
would love
catch
it to
on
catch
as much.
fire. I would like, yeah, that's the thing. It never would catch on much. I would love to see it catch on, but it never will because what you're effectively inviting people to do is to take longer to clear content. And people, unfortunately, in this day and age, it's so weird. Here's what I don't get. We as gamers globally tend to embrace challenges. We talk about games like, Dark Souls and things like that, where the hype that these videos get and the millions of views that these videos get when someone does it like a no-hit challenge on Dark Souls and we ramp things up to nightmare difficulty and look how good of a gamer I am. I did it on the hardest setting. Fuck all of you noobs. I'm better than you. Is this pervasive theory that happens through gaming. Yet somehow we toss that out the window when it comes to World of Warcraft Classic, and you are ostracized if you won't do it on easy mode.
Yeah, is it multiplayer?
Because,
Is it because it's a multiplayer game? Is that the
right,
biggest
because
problem?
it's a
Because these single
multiplayer and
player
it-
games
Yeah,
are
you have to
really
count on
good.
other
multiplayer and
people.
it's
Yeah, that
40
would be-
people, right? It's multiplayer and it's 40 people. So you have a scheduled time, and the faster you get through it, the more time in your life you get back. But I think you're onto something though. Why are we so? Because when we get, I mean, the pure fact that I said if we go to TBC and mage boosting is a thing, I will probably have to mage boost to 70, right? Why is that a thing? Is it peer pressure?
No, I think, and there's a good point, obviously being raised by Naismith in the chat. Whereas, and you guys brought this up as well when you say it's kind of comparing apples to oranges when we talk about single player versus multiplayer. Because what you're also doing is you're inviting other people to sacrifice their time for your goals. Now, I do agree, but a part of me is also like, but also when you do play the single player game on the nightmare setting, you're kind of acknowledging that it might take a little bit longer to get through. And so you're already sacrificing your own time. So if everyone was of the same mind that, if this were a single player game, I would be sacrificing my extra time anyway. And I know it's this hard comparison because it's such an expansive multiplayer game. But I just think that there's a sliver of the same ethos there where it's like, if we all just come together as a group and acknowledge that we're going to sacrifice, if we're all good players and we're pretty confident with the content and we're going to sacrifice a little bit extra of our time, but feel the endorphins pump through us when we do it without world buffs. It just depends on what kind of challenge you're looking for. Because as I say, this is a pipe dream because MMO RPG players seemingly, it's weird because sorry, I'm completely ranting here, because we revere the challenge of WoW retail and we go fucking harder, make it harder, Mythic Plus, baby. Oh, this game's so good, look how hard it is.
Yeah, but there's only 2% of the population that actually does Mythic, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But then we applaud that. But then we kind of dive headfirst into the world buffs and making classic easier. I don't know. I've just always kind of.
I think it's not just the multiplayer in the sense that we have a obligation to each other to try to make things go smoothly. I actually think it has way more to do with how competitive multiplayer games have just become as a whole. So many people are playing games like League of Legends. I remember reading this book years ago called like Playing to Win, and the idea was like, bad players in games get upset when, like in a fighting game, all you do is trip them over and over again to win. But in reality, you're a better player if you use cheap moves to win as much as possible. And I feel like I've been, as like someone who's played a lot of competitive FPS games, I was really into Arena and stuff like that, and PvP back in the day. So to me, this whole playing to win thing, the world boss falls right into it, as it's not just about trying to do something hard and achieve it. You also just want to do something better than other players. And if other people are getting world buffs and we can all go look at parses, it's really hard to be like, let's let that go and let's just do something hard for ourselves. Because I just think that games are so competitive these days.
Well, I think it's harder in Classic too, though. You have to think about this, right? When you play a single player game, you're putting in extra time, but it's time on your timeline. And when you're playing with 40 other people, it's time on 40 other people's timeline. And as much as everybody is competitive and wants to do it the best, we all have different lives. We all have different time zones. We all have different things. And it's very difficult to get 40 people without being psycho super hardcore to be on that same timeline, even if they are competitive. Even if they could say, if this was single player, I'd come back tomorrow and finish this way.
Yeah, I think that, and again, Naismith brings up a good point, which, because I don't play retail, I forget about all this stuff. As he's saying, like, there is a greater reward though for the challenge if you choose to undertake that in Mythic Plus. They get better loot, and that's the correct point to raise there. I mean, that's why also though, I've been a big advocate of, like, bring in a higher difficulty mode in classic dungeons that might come with better loot to entice people. And like, if you're gonna, I don't want classic plus because I don't think they can do it well. But if that were the classic plus that we never sort of talked about, not new content, but actually, new loot or something somehow. And I know there's a million different, fucking things to unpack and problems with that when I say it, but I just, that's the kind of classic plus that I would applaud if we did push back on the challenge a little bit and maybe entice people to try it at a harder difficulty.
I think
I have the best idea. No, listen, you have to hear this. If anybody in your raid had world buffs easy mode, nobody would do it.
Well, that's almost exactly my point, is that I think without any Blizzard changes, without any Blizzard changes, the only way that this would happen is if the players somehow normalize not shaming. I mean, the players have to normalize not the world buff lists runs as like the pinnacle. How fast
literally
can you do this dungeon without world
balls
buffs?
in your court? Warcraft logs, balls in your court.
Yeah,
put that on the front page.
It's not just Warcraft logs; it's up to the players too, because we idolize these like speedrunners, all these private server speedrunners, they can do Nax in 48 minutes, and it's cool and everything, but we just somehow as a player
It's been
base
a
need to be
shit
like,
ton of money.
like some guilds are out there like I can't do Nax without world buffs. It's interesting to see how fast a guild with no world buffs can do Nax because you can compare yourself so much better when you watch a guild of 18 warriors with world buffs just plowing through stuff. It's hard to even they're playing an entirely different game than you. It's really hard to even get into that. So for me, watching people do it without world buffs would be interesting. I just don't know how you normalize that. But if we did, then people would, yeah, like you said, easy mode. Relabel it as instead of no world buff, just label it regular mode and easy mode.
Yeah,
Do
dude.
it hard mode and easy mode, right? Just label it that way and just watch. People
You
will
know
just
how
be
you
like, whoa.
you know how you really fix it in a fashion possible? Call it small penis mode.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
See, I'm a girl, so that doesn't affect me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Ovary
That's
up, baby.
better.
Ovary up. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
you say small ovaries, and I'm like, okay.
Oh man. Well,
Good insult, Bob.
yeah. I mean, there's some good points there. Do you guys have any have any points you want to make for like world buffs getting removed as soon as you walk into an instance in TBC? Because there were a lot of people that were still speculating that some of the world buffs were still going to be good.
Yeah,
you're
some
muted.
people went back. I remember
Oh.
some people went back and looked at some of the original TBC logs, and it was like, I'm totally just spitballing this, but it was like Method's first kill of Kill Jaden and
it
stuff.
was
They
China.
brought in world buffs. Oh, it was the Chinese
Yeah.
first, like they were bringing these into into their first kills of stuff. So like obviously, even then there were some problems with that world buff meta still kind of existing. So I think
Right.
that there's absolutely no problem with people not being able to bring world buffs in. I think the average player probably expected world buffs to be gone. So I think for like 90% of the population, this is sort of just a no-brainer. And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that this would still be a thing.
But you have to also think, I didn't get world buffs when I played vanilla. Okay, and now all of a sudden they're a thing that I have to do. But
And we did play vanilla on a very high level. We had server first
Yeah.
kills throughout MC and BWL. So I mean, it's not like we were in a like a
I thought
casual
those
guild.
world buffs were worthless. But what I'm saying is, I think I didn't get them in vanilla. So yes, maybe I thought I wouldn't have to get them in TBC, but this is a totally different game now. It's played totally different. It is way more figured out than it used to be. So I don't think anybody can go in thinking like, oh, well, we wouldn't have gotten them anyways. Yes, you were definitely thinking, I'm going to get those. That can only help. So I think that this is Blizzard's way of saying, I understand that world buffs were an issue in Classic. We couldn't fix it. We couldn't figure it out in time before we realized it was too far gone and then it would change too many things. So in TBC, just they're gone. Done. And I think that's great. Like, this is what we want to see.
And there was no vocal uproar.
Yep. All right. Well, the last little bit of news is there was a recent survey sent out. There's been reports that there were 3 separate versions of this survey sent out. And it basically is just asking the players what they would be willing, like if they would be willing to pay a certain cost for character cloning to classic era servers. And the 3 different surveys were $29.99, $19.99 and $9.99, and they're asking people, how likely would you be to clone your character for this price? And then there's some other questions like on how often have you used the in-game reporting system? How often have you used the in-game ignore list? And how
Those
often?
are fluff questions.
Yeah, like it's just basically asking that. And then like
How many times have you been banned?
in the past 3
Discard.
months, how frequently do you see the following behaviors in World of Warcraft games? And so they're kind of like, it's basically asking about the clone and asking about bad behavior, BM. So what do you guys think of this
Listen,
survey?
I think they tried to frame it as they were trying to get to the root of bad behavior when really their goal was how much will you pay for this? And that's fine. But I also feel like it's when you ask employees, do you feel like you're compensated adequately for your position? The random employee that says yes, like who are you? Who says that? That's just like, yeah, I don't need any more money. Don't give it to me. I'm really good.
I mean, this is like
Mhm.
I absolutely hate this because Blizzard is trying to get the best of both worlds. I've talked about before how in RuneScape, anytime there's a change, they poll it, but they poll it so that everyone can see what the results are. So you can see what the player base is voting for, whether or not they like a change. What this does is now when the clone comes out and it's 29.99, they're going to be like, "Oh, well, we sent out a survey. This is what people said they wanted to pay. Either charge me $30 or charge me $10." But don't put this on now. All of a sudden, it's like the player base's fault for how much this clone costs, as opposed to Blizzard's fault for how much this clone costs.
This sounds like a
Yeah.
disagreement between the people who wanted to charge 10 and who wanted to charge 30. And they're like,
Yeah.
F it. We're just going to send out a survey and we're going to see what people
Yeah,
want
I
to do.
agree. And was there an option of free? I don't think so. So
Would
fuck
you
'em.
transfer your character for free?
No, I'm with you, Yip. This made me really upset, this survey. It's really disingenuous. And look, I've been really putting the boot into Blizzard lately, and I've been told
I've
I
been
need to
loving it.
settle the fuck down. So how can I say this in a constructive way without just sounding like someone who's just unloading on the punching bag? I think that there is a tone. Again, I keep talking about tones, and maybe I've just got a weird interpretation of a lot of things that come from Blizzard. But I read a weird tone from this survey, much like you did, Yip, in terms of when we talk about the behavior and first the price points. It's like, number one, I think it's kind of horrible that they're charging us a price at all for the option of staying on a classic server. I just think that is kind of abhorrent in a way that we petitioned for this game, we wanted this game, and like, yeah, we didn't pay a box price for it, and they can do the whole wear the angel here. All you had to do over the last 2 years was pay a subscription price, and we gave you classic for free. That what they're doing is they're recuperating the lost box price. It's reverse engineering of a payment for the game, which is very smart business, but also not winning you a lot of brownie points with your player base. So,
Okay, but how many players are actually not going to play because they're mad at Blizzard?
Well, no. So there's two separate points here, though, because if we're talking about how many players are not going to play TBC because they're mad at Blizzard, the answer is absolutely not many. But if we're talking about how many players will not copy their character to a classic server because they're mad over the excessive price point, I think now we're dancing. Do you know what I mean? We might actually be talking about a few people here.
Okay, but those few people, are they still going to play TBC?
I think they'll still play TBC, but what Blizzard is trying to do...
So it doesn't get them any more money, though, is what I'm saying. Is if they copy their character for free into Classic Era servers and they play TBC, they still have a subscription, which is the only cost that they're paying. They could also play retail and other things, and it doesn't matter to Blizzard because they're not getting any additional money. And I guess if we look at the number of people that
does
are
matter
playing...
to Blizzard because they want the additional money.
Right. They want the additional money, but it doesn't give them any. So they don't
Right.
care. It doesn't cost more money for us to play TBC and to play retail, right? And if it didn't cost any money to play Classic Era, how do you justify the cost that you're going to spend on developers and people monitoring this game if nobody's paying any more money? If those same people are playing TBC and retail or one or the other, like how do you justify that cost?
Way too hard to justify when the Blizzard CEO is getting a $200 million bonus for
you
hitting.
justify it by their quarterly report right after WoW Classic came out. I mean, 3 billion subscribers at $15 a month is a lot of dough, and they didn't give us anything for like the first 6 to 9 months of Classic. It was just crickets.
Right, and those people still stayed. And this is what I'm saying is you have to look at this, take your gamer mind out of it, where you're just like, I want you to do it because you love the game. Yes, that's all fair and good, guys. But let's be real. This is a business, and a business has to make money, and it has to present things that will make them money. And how do you justify costs of these people and these people that we want? We want those people to make our game better. We want those people to make our game good, but we also don't want to pay for this or that. Like, I don't know. I
I'll
just
tell you,
feel like it's-
I know what you're saying, and I don't. I'm on board with you in terms of the concept of I don't fly with the people who think it's illogical for companies to make money from their work on video games, right? I'm completely with you that they have the absolute right to monetize their product, 1000%. I think it's then a further conversation when we talk about the extent to which that product is then monetized. Now, Mel, 100%, I understand what you're saying, but to equate it to something like this, it's number one, I think it's important to say that everyone is kind of ringing the death knell for WoW Classic servers, going, everyone's moving on to TBC. Look at all these fucking idiots who are staying on Classic. And number one, there will be none of them. Look, maybe I'm an optimist in this regard. I don't think those servers will be packed by any means, but there will be a portion of the player base that does not move on to TBC, and they will stay and they will play classic servers. And everyone goes like, well, what are they going to be playing? Fucking Nax is out. It's all done. Well, they've already told us they're planning on rolling fresh. They're planning on rolling fresh vanilla servers to keep that spicy. So when that happens, I absolutely believe there will be, I don't want to use the word sizable, but there will be people playing classic forever, right?
For sure.
I really, truly believe that in my heart of hearts. Now, with all of them paying a subscription specifically for that service and for that service alone, there's your income for that version of the game, because now more of the team is moved over to the TBC side of things, and you've got the janitor and the chef, pressing one button, maintaining the classic servers. It's what I'm getting at is obviously being, a bit facetious there with the comparison, but it's a lower cost to maintain classic servers now. And either way, they're paying those devs for their work on the TBC servers anyway, and they might just say once every fucking week, hey guys, can you just take an hour and just make sure the classic servers are okay? Yeah, cool. We're paying you for to be here anyway, so go and do that. So we're talking about if we're talking about recuperating costs, I'm not sure that the costs have already been incurred and they've absolutely won their money back.
Well, and what sucks,
one last thing. Sorry,
okay,
one last thing, Bob. Just to finish this up. On top of that, it's an odd thing to think of where benevolent Blizzard gave us the game for free 2 years ago. All we had to do was pay the subscription costs. But then, like I said, it's a weird move to retroactively come back on that product and say, hey, by the way, those of you who subscribed just purely to play this product and you weren't interested in TBC, well, now we're going to sting you for a box price 2 years after the fact. It's kind of like,
but you can choose to stay and not pay.
Yeah,
you can choose to stay and not pay.
Oh, is that, sorry, am I getting that wrong? I thought if you stay, you pay regardless.
And not pay. But if you want to have one on TBC and one on Classic, you have to pay.
Yeah, you have the choice to go to either one at the start, and then you have the choice to pay to have your snapshot go to the other one.
Okay, you're right. So that somewhat waters down what I'm about to say, but a small part of it still applies, because there is the player. Then absolutely, you're right. I'll concede. I sounded like a fuckwit there for a second, but now as my mind moves, I'm thinking of this kind of player where it's like, what about the player that moves into TBC and then moves on to, as far as I'm concerned, the inevitable Wrath of the Lich King that's coming as well, and they're 6 months into Wrath in 2.5 years' time, and they've had a ball through everything, but then as part of their brain goes like, I want to go back and play Classic, and now it's like, fuck, they didn't let me keep my character there, and I have to pay maybe now to, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously gone because it's progressed, but it just feels like a weird thing where they had to pay for the option to maybe one day go back when they already did the work on Classic. I don't know.
I think you could pay it.
Yeah, I think theoretically you could pay at any time. Even then, when Wrath is going on, you could pay, and you'll still get the snapshot of when pre-patch hit. It'll just be everything you had on your character way back then. But the point that I was going to make is I honestly hope it costs more. I hope it costs more, because if it's $9.99, I'm going to do it. And then I'm not going to log in for 2 years until I get nostalgic and be like, what gear did I have on back then? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll log in and look at my gear and be like, oh, man, those were the times. I remember raiding with Varg Flocken. And then I'm going to log out. And I think there's a lot of people that'll do that if it's that cheap. And then
Which is why they would do it.
but that's why it's bad for us, or it's bad for the people that really want to enjoy classic era servers and have a full world, because I'm not going to be there, and the rest of the people like me aren't going to be there. But if it's $29.99, I'm not going to buy it, and I'm not going to screw up their classic era servers.
Yeah, but you're not going to screw up their classic era server by not playing your character either way.
Well, Blizzard's going to look at who copied. Blizzard's going to look at who copied, and that's how they're going to judge how many servers to merge.
Great, and then a month later, when they realize that the active player base is,
you got a point. You got a point.
They might, I just don't think that that's like a reason to increase it. But to engage with Mel, I know that she's like brings in the business side of things. What other how do you feel about surveying the player base of how much it should cost? Don't you think that is kind of okay? If it costs $30, it costs $30. But to make us decide how much it's going to cost is another level of I think really, if it's not $9.99 at this point, now that we know that they're thinking about $9.99, if it comes out and it's the $39.99, I might not pay for it just out of spite. That is just so crazy for you to try to ask us how much it should cost and use survey data for it.
It's their sleazy way of trying to see how much money we can get out of you, right? $9.99 must be their base, where they're like, we can't do it any less than this, or else we won't be able to hit X quota, right? But I also want to take into account, I'm not just looking on the money side, guys. I promise. I do think of other things. I just am the only one that ever brings it up, so I usually try to bring it up. But you also have to think the money that they are going to make, that private servers would make if they didn't do some of these things, right? And that's what you have to think of too, is that it's not even just in their best interest to keep these going or to keep this happening just because they have to pay devs. It's also the fact that if you didn't do that, these people would drop their subscription and go to a private server and give somebody else money and not you, which is what happened for years and years and years before Classic was announced.
Okay. Well,
it's also a bit rich on top of that. I don't know, just to ask for a fee now for a product that we know, whether or not it continues to be the case, for a product that we know is kind of mismanaged, full of bots, and has no customer service monitoring the servers whatsoever. And they're like, hey, those really cool classic servers that we basically don't keep an eye on at all? Would you like to pay us for the right to stay on them? It's like, really?
Yeah. And just to go back to what Yip said earlier about polling the entire population, just to put my tinfoil hat on for a second, but maybe Blizzard doesn't want to do that because they know that 33% of the vote will be bot farms.
Yeah, I guess,
you know what I mean?
I guess that's the problem. But I just think it's a cop out. I just think that just the price alone is something that I'm really kind of just irked by for all the reasons that Josh laid out as well too. But then to just survey us for what the price should be, we all now know what the surveys said. To then decide on a price that isn't going to be the smallest, I just think that it's insulting, and I just don't. I don't like it.
I got the same insult, Yip, and sorry, I'll try and sound a little bit smarter now. After I feel so silly for bringing up a good 5-minute rant on a dumb point when I forgot that they're not charging us if you just want to stay on Classic.
There's so much shit, dude. There's so much shit that is confusing. There's so much shit. Don't we're all here to try to get more educated on the game. That's what the whole show's about,
But on the other point that Yip brought up in terms of they were asking questions not only about the price of staying of the character copy, but also about the bad player behavior. The BM, as you said, Bob. Was it BM you said?
Yeah.
I just think that that's kind of equally an odd question and kind of insulting question in a weird way, in terms of they know that one of the primary complaints about their game is kind of like, obviously bots and everything, but also like they know this is a toxic community. They know that like bad shit happens in the game, and that world chat can be flooded with horrible things that people say to be edge lords.
Horrible.
We have a game with some of my listeners where we send each other some of the most offensive player names that we spot in worlds, and some of the names are fucking like, you can be a kid and do the laugh at that, but some of them are funny because if they're not if they're not overly offensive, but some are so offensive that you're like, how the fuck is that person running around at level 60 with that name? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
And so Blizzard to poll us on, where do you see bad player behavior? Do you see it in Battlegrounds? Do you see it in open world? Do you see it here? Do you see it there? And it's like, you fucking know where we see it. Don't, like you said, don't put it back on us to try and just highlight one little area where it's happening. It's happening fucking everywhere. And if you policed your game as an MMO developer should, instead of cutting corners with price, then you would actually do something about it, rather than just focusing maybe, 22% of pollees said, or pollsters said, that they were experiencing bad behavior in Battlegrounds. So we'll just hire someone or whatever. We'll just focus on Battlegrounds and nothing else. I don't know. It just felt weird to me.
Dude, something to bring back
here's
to the point you were saying, though, earlier, Josh, is you were talking about it's weird that they're starting to try and monetize now. And I think it's just because they thought Classic was going to be a joke. And then on release day, they're like, oh. Sorry, go ahead.
To bring it back to the BM now. So what's weird about this specifically is, one, I would think that they know this information. How often have you used the in-game reporting system?
Yeah, don't you know? Does it come to you?
Know that?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is those are fluff questions.
Email. So
those are fluff questions to disguise the actual intent of the
survey. But I'm gonna take it at face value because we're talking about it. I'm not just gonna ignore it. But the thing is, there is such a huge difference between Classic and retail around the same era, and I think that if anybody, maybe this is anecdotal and I'm wrong, but Bingo Jones had a character in TBC named Bag of Poop, and he had to change it within like 2 days. But I see people whose names are slurs and they're not changed, or they're level 60 with names of slurs.
It is crazy.
And I'm supposed to believe we're getting like the same experience. I just can't believe it. I'm leveling a paladin right now. I see in the Shimmering Flats, I would bring my mage down and slaughter 20 plus bots every time I would come on. And it's unbelievable that we just have hunters with they just smash the keyboard with their names, and somehow they're level 40 already and they're still just farming. I just don't find things like that to be acceptable at all.
Agreed. So can we all agree that when Vanilla came out, it was Blizzard? When Classic WoW came out, it was Activision Blizzard. Okay, so what we're looking at is Blizzard now has to justify to Activision, who is basically funding, why they will incur extra costs, right? So that's, I think, what these surveys are about. It's saying, hey, here is the reason that we have to do this. And these are like, not because Blizzard thinks that these are the end all be all, tell us exactly what is happening, but it's a way for them to justify extra costs to the almighty dollar of Activision. And I think that is just where we have turned wrong, right?
Yeah, the problem,
like, they got too big.
The ultimate problem is and again, I don't demonize companies for trying to make money out of their games, but the responsibility does fall back on the consumer, where the sad part of it all is, as if we do get more purchasable items introduced to us, or purchasable services introduced to us through the lifespan of the Classic franchise, ultimately what's going to happen is you can only talk with your wallet. People are going to buy them just like they do in retail. We hear all the bitching, but people keep buying them and people keep their subscriptions up. Not enough people walk away from the game. So it's all well and good to sit here and we say poo-poo this and bad that. But at the end of the day, we're kind of the minority, and the majority of people, as we see through how much money microtransactions earn in the industry, just buy them, and not enough people will stop to the point that it actually sends a message. So until that
It's
happens,
a
we're
difference
stuck with
between
it.
philosophy and finance, right? You have to have a gaming philosophy. And I think that everybody that's a Blizzard fan is a Blizzard fan because of because of what Blizzard has done throughout the years. And realizing that Blizzard might be a different company now because they have to justify every move that they do to somebody else who's just involved in the money aspect. And I don't want to say just involved. This is purely speculation, by the way. I have zero idea if this is true, but this is what it looks like to me, that they have to justify every decision, every financial move that they make with some sort of data. And I think that that has changed Blizzard into a very different company than they used to be.
For
it's
sure.
it's not
But I
changing the
gotta,
player base.
I've gotta move us on, guys.
Wait. Okay, before you move
One
us
last
on,
thing.
last point, because this is fresh news, and I don't want to speculate too much. And maybe it's not fresh news. I just learned about it. But it's not affecting the player base. That's a big problem because we all just, no matter what Blizzard does, we sort of have this weird tie to it, and we keep paying the money. But the people who work at Blizzard are leaving, and that's just the fact that it's happening.
Yeah.
Omar
Yeah.
has left Blizzard to join Mike Morheim at
Yep.
Dreamhaven. So for us to be like, oh well, everything's okay. I don't know. Like I don't.
I wasn't
There's a
saying
lot to
everything's
speculate
okay.
here. I know, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's not affecting the player base right now. But what's happening internally
will.
at Blizzard is pretty worrisome. I mean, there's a lot of things coming out about that, and a lot of mass exodus of really great developers. And I think it's something that needs to be looked at in the future, and whether or not it's like what they're doing is a good path or not. And I think we'll have repercussions down the line for what's happening now, but we
Definitely.
just don't know right
Definitely.
There's
But we're
immediate
moving on.
reinforcement.
Nope.
But the
Yip had
long-term,
Yip had the last thought. We're moving on to
there's immediate reinforcement,
discussion.
and the long term is just going to bite them in the butt, right? But they don't see that, and they don't
Mel,
know that yet.
we are
so
moving
they
on.
can't. Fine.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to discussion.